Sarah clutched her worn backpack, her knuckles white against the strap, a nervous habit she couldn't shake. This was her first time babysitting for the Millers, a new family in town, and from the moment she stepped onto their overgrown, creaking porch, a profound sense of wrongness settled over her. Their house wasn't just old, it was ancient, a grand Victorian that loomed like a forgotten sentinel, its dark windows staring out like vacant eyes. It felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum, a place where light struggled to penetrate and sound was swallowed whole. Inside, dust motes danced in the sparse, sickly yellow beams of light filtering through the heavy velvet curtains, which seemed to absorb all warmth. The air hung thick and still, carrying a faint cloying scent, part musty decay, part something vaguely metallic like old blood, and a sickeningly sweet floral note that felt out of place. Mrs. Miller, a woman with a perpetually worried expression etched into her pale, drawn face, gave her a quick, almost frantic tour, her eyes darting, nervously as if expecting something to appear from the shadows. "Little Lily is asleep upstairs," she whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with a tremor. She's usually a sound sleeper once she's settled, and the house is quiet. Mr. Miller, a stern man with eyes that never quite met Sarah's, his gaze fixed on a distant, unseen point above her head, cleared his throat, a dry, rasping sound. "There's just one thing, Sarah," he said, his voice unusually low, almost a guttural murmur. "The upstairs apartment, directly above Lily's room. An old man lives there. He keeps entirely to himself, a recluse. Just don't mind any noises you might hear. He's quite elderly, a bit eccentric, and forgetful, very forgetful." He didn't elaborate, but the way he nervously adjusted his tie, his fingers fumbling, and Mrs. Miller's quick, almost imperceptible flinch, followed by a raw, terrified glance at the ceiling, sent a profound shiver down Sarah's spine, deeper than the chilly air in the house. With a final hurried wave, they were gone, their car tires crunching on the gravel driveway, leaving Sarah utterly alone in the echoing, suffocating silence of the old, unholy house. The first hour crawled by in unsettling quiet, each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall amplifying the heavy stillness. Sarah checked on Lily, finding the small girl seemingly asleep, her tiny form a surprisingly heavy lump under a dark, thick quilt that felt inexplicably cold to the touch. Lily's room felt oddly devoid of personality, unnervingly sterile, and perfectly clean, like a room prepared for an occupant who never truly belonged. Sarah settled down on the plush, but slightly damp-smelling, sofa in the living room, attempting to distract herself with her phone, though her gaze kept straying to the unlit corners of the room. Around 9 o'clock, it began. A faint, irregular creaking started from directly above, not just a house settling, but a distinct, heavy dragging sound, as if something immense and unwilling was being pulled across raw, splintered wood. The old man probably just moving furniture, Sarah tried to rationalize, clinging desperately to Mr. Miller's dismissive words, but the sound was too deliberate, too slow, too agonizingly rhythmic. A deep, resonant scrape, scrape, pause, scrape. And then, a subtle, almost imperceptible hum joined the creaking, a low, guttural drone just beneath the threshold of hearing that seemed to vibrate not only through the floorboards, but through Sarah's very bones, a deeply unsettling resonance. It wasn't tuneful, nor was it loud, but it was relentless, a chilling undercurrent to the otherwise oppressive silence. Sarah's eyes kept darting towards the ceiling, her phone forgotten in her clammy hands, her heart beginning a slow, anxious thrum. The unease was no longer a knot, but a cold, spreading dread, tightening its grip with every slow, deliberate drag and every resonating hum. She felt a distinct prickling sensation on her skin, as if she were being watched from the oppressive shadows that clung stubbornly to every corner of the room. Shadows that seemed to deepen and shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The rhythmic dragging and the low, unsettling drone continued, a relentless torment that seeped into Sarah's thoughts, distorting the quiet of the house. She couldn't shake the feeling that the sound wasn't just movement, but some kind of methodical, agonizing labor, an ancient and horrific process unfolding directly above her. Suddenly, a heavy, resonant thud echoed from directly above Lily's room. Not a book falling, but something much denser, something with a sickening weight, striking the floor with a dull, wet impact that vibrated through the very foundations of the house. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. Lily was directly below that sound. Against every rational instinct, a fierce, protective urge overriding her paralyzing fear, Sarah forced her trembling legs to move, creeping up the grand, groaning staircase, each step a protest from the ancient wood. The droning hum seemed louder here, almost a mournful lament, or perhaps a desperate incantation, pulsing with an unnatural energy. As she reached the landing, the air grew noticeably colder, carrying that sickly sweet, metallic scent. She noticed a faint, sickly yellow sliver of flickering light pulsing faintly under the door to the upstairs apartment. Hesitantly, compelled by a morbid curiosity and a desperate need to understand, she moved closer, her breath catching in her throat, the cold seeping into her lungs. Through a tiny, barely discernible crack in the warped doorframe, she saw him. A skeletal figure, impossibly thin, hunched over something on the floor, silhouetted against the dim, flickering light within, which seemed to emanate from a single pulsating candle. He wasn't rocking, nor was he merely moving things. He was carving. His hands, gnarled and surprisingly swift, moved with an unnerving, almost inhuman precision. A long, wickedly glinting blade flashing rhythmically, reflecting the pulsing light like a malevolent eye. The object of his focus was indistinct, but appeared organic, lumpy, and terribly, sickeningly familiar, draped in something dark and glistening. And the humming wasn't humming at all. It was a low, guttural, continuous chanting, a sound that felt ancient and profoundly wrong. A series of guttural clicks, rasps, and wet hisses that spoke not of human speech, but of desperation, a primal struggle, and a ritualistic torment. Sarah gasped silently, clapping a hand over her mouth to stifle the sound, her eyes wide with unadulterated horror. The image of the blade, the unsettling organic form, and the chilling, desperate, non-human chant seared themselves into her mind. A profound, unshakable chill settling deep within her bones, reaching into the marrow, threatening to freeze her solid. She backed away slowly, carefully, her legs numb, the silence of the rest of the house now feeling like a monstrous trap. Waiting. True panic began to set in, a cold, sharp claw tightening around Sarah's chest, squeezing the air from her lungs. She stumbled back to the living room, her vision swimming slightly, her hands shaking so violently she could barely grip her phone, its smooth surface feeling alien and cold against her sweaty palm. She dialed Mrs. Miller's number, but it went straight to a dead, impersonal voicemail, the automated voice mocking her growing terror. She tried Mr. Miller, her fingers fumbling over the keypad, the same chilling result. They said they'd be reachable. They promised. She thought frantically, a sick feeling curdling in her stomach, turning her insides to ice. The rhythmic thudding from upstairs, now accompanied by sharp, grating scrapes that sounded like bone against stone, had changed its character entirely. It was no longer methodical but frantic, a desperate, violent tearing sound, punctuated by sharp, desperate grunts and gasps from the old man, sounds of struggle and immense strain. It sounded as if whatever he was carving was almost finished, or perhaps was desperately, violently trying to escape its bonds, fighting back with a primal fury. Sarah peered towards the stairs, her heart pounding a frantic, irregular rhythm against her ribs, a drum solo of terror. The air thickened, pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. Then, from directly above, a faint, choked whimper, barely audible, followed by a louder, high-pitched cry that pierced the oppressive silence. Lily. Without a second thought, pure adrenaline overriding her paralyzing fear and the instinct to flee, Sarah dashed up the stairs, two at a time, ignoring the creaking complaints of the ancient wood. She burst into Lily's room, her eyes scanning, wildly, desperately searching for the source of the child's distress. The little girl was sitting bolt upright in bed, a small dark shadow against the pale sheets, her eyes wide with unadulterated, primal terror, fixed not on Sarah, but on the far wall by her headboard. "Man!" Lily whispered, her voice thin and reedy, stretched beyond normal human register, pointing a trembling, almost translucent finger towards the wall. "Bad man!" Trying to help her, but she's coming. Sarah's gaze snapped to the wall. There, etched deep into the plaster, as if with immense force, was a crudely drawn, yet disturbingly intricate symbol, pulsing faintly with its own sickly internal light, like a malignant bruise. And from the other side of the wall, from the old man's apartment, a low, rasping voice, closer now, impossibly close, seemed to whisper directly into Sarah's ear, so clear it might have been inside her head, laced with a chilling mixture of exhaustion, profound dread, and a hint of something utterly broken. "Soon, child, soon she wakes. And then there will be no more quiet." The faint glow from the symbol pulsed in sync with her racing heart. Sarah scooped up Lily, whose small body felt unnervingly cold and stiff, like a doll made of ice, trembling violently in her arms. Lily was silent now, her small hands clutching Sarah's shirt with a grip far too strong for a child her age. Driven by a desperate, animalistic need to escape, Sarah ran to the front door, locked, and the deadbolt was firmly engaged, unyielding. To her frantic shaking, the back door locked. Every single window, even though she remembered being unlatched earlier, was now sealed tight, as if by an unseen, malicious force, each pane of glass reflecting her terrified, distorted face. It was then, as she desperately searched for any means of egress, that the faint, sweet smell, which had been lurking at the edges of her perception since she arrived, masked by the cloying scent of cheap disinfectant the Millers had clearly used in excess, surged forward, becoming overpowering. It was the smell of decaying flowers, cloyingly sweet and sickly, like a funeral parlor in summer, but beneath it, a sharp metallic tang, like old blood, fresh and coppery, and something else. Something indescribably foul and ancient, like earth, disturbed from a forgotten grave. It filled her nostrils, her throat, making her gag. She looked at Lily, who was now clinging to her with an unnatural, almost painful grip, her small face pressed into Sarah's shoulder, her silent sobs replaced by a chilling stillness. Lily's room, Lily's bed. Sarah's mind raced, connecting. Fragmented details, each one a sharp spike of dawning horror. There were no cheerful family photos in Lily's room, no childish drawings haphazardly taped to the walls, number-scattered toys, not even a single personal item. It was too sterile, too perfectly clean, almost unnervingly sparse for a child's bedroom, as if it were a temporary holding cell, a display for something precious yet dangerous. And the symbols on the wall, they weren't random scratches from a frightened child. They were repeating patterns, intricate and unsettling, subtly glowing with a faint, internal light that seemed to pulse with an ancient rhythm, a silent, malevolent heartbeat. As Sarah watched, more faint glowing lines began to appear on the ceiling and floor, connecting to the symbol on the wall, forming a complex glowing web that pulsed ominously, bathing the room in a dim crimson hue. The frantic thudding and scraping from upstairs had ceased entirely, replaced by an absolute, profound, unnatural silence that descended upon the house. A silence more terrifying than any noise, a silence that felt heavy and expectant. It felt as though the very air had thickened, pressing in on them, making every breath a struggle against an invisible weight. Sarah realized with a sickening lurch of her stomach that churned like curdled milk, that they weren't just trapped by locked doors and sealed windows. They were trapped within something vast and malevolent that permeated the very foundations of the house, drawing power from the old wood and the very air. And Lily, in her arms, felt less like a child and more like a heavy, cold burden, a ticking bomb she was unwillingly holding. A sudden, jarring, sickening thump against the ceiling directly above Lily's room made Sarah scream. A raw, primal sound ripped from her throat, echoing eerily in the suffocating silence. The impact was so violent, plaster dust drifted down like macabre snow, coating them in a fine white shroud. She pressed Lily closer, her body rigid with terror, ready to bolt, to smash through anything, to tear her way out of this living nightmare. The low chanting resumed from upstairs, but this time it was clear and articulate, a single word repeated over and over, growing louder and more frantic, filled with a desperate, raw urgency that clawed at her sanity. Protect! 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 Oh God, protect! She's loose! She's loose! And then, with a splintering crash that echoed through the house like a gunshot, the front door burst inward, revealing not just Mr. and Mrs. Miller, but several other figures. Shadowy and gaunt, their faces contorted, not with concern for Lily, but with a chilling, zealous rage that distorted their features into something monstrous. Mrs. Miller, her eyes burning with an almost insane fanaticism, her lips drawn back, in a rictus of fury, held a small, exquisitely carved, yet disturbingly grotesque, ornate box in her hands, its surface shimmering faintly. "You meddling girl!" she shrieked, her voice no longer soft but harsh, raw, and vibrating with an ancient, unholy fury. "You woke her." She was almost contained. The ritual, it was almost complete. Sarah stared, confused, horrified, her mind struggling to process the contradictory horrors unfolding before her. Woke who? Contained what? Ritual? Her gaze darted from the fanatical, approaching Miller's to Lily in her arms. Lily's quiet sobbing had stopped entirely. Her small body was unnervingly still. Just then, a voice, clear and resonant as a bell, yet ancient and full of immense, terrifying power, spoke from the ceiling, directly above them, seeming to resonate from the very core of the house. It was a voice that was neither old nor male, but youthful, feminine, and profoundly, chillingly wrong, carrying an undertone of immense, slumbering malice. "He protects me," the voice echoed eerily through the house, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere, enveloping them. "He always has. But he is weakening. His power wanes." Sarah looked up at the ceiling, then back at the Millers and their gaunt companions, their faces twisting with a horrifying, manic devotion, their eyes fixed on Lily. Then, slowly, fearfully, with a dread that turned her blood to ice, she looked down at Lily in her arms. Lily was looking up too, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, a slow, wide, unnatural smile spreading across her small face. A smile that stretched too far, revealing too many teeth, sharpened and gleaming faintly. Her eyes, moments ago wide with innocent terror, now glowed with a faint, malevolent red light, pulsing with a terrible inner power and a faint, ancient hum, far more powerful and resonant than anything Sarah had heard from upstairs, began to emanate not from the ceiling, but from Lily herself, vibrating through Sarah's very soul. The old man hadn't been creeping down to harm Lily. He had been desperately trying to reinforce a fading seal, a powerful ward against a primordial presence the Millers hadn't just trapped, but had deliberately summoned and bound within their daughter decades ago. The sounds, the carving, the symbol. He wasn't threatening Lily. He was desperately, futilely, trying to keep something horrifyingly ancient and powerful from getting out, from fully possessing the child. The old man. Upstairs was a benevolent, exhausted guardian, a prisoner himself, fighting a losing battle against a darkness he alone knew. The actual horror wasn't the old man, but the Millers themselves, who were not parents, but a desperate, fanatical cult, zealously devoted to a monstrous, world-ending entity they had carefully cultivated within their own child, a sacrifice to unleash ultimate power. And the chilling truth was, Lily wasn't just Lily. She was the vessel, the gateway, the key. She was the one they were trying to unleash upon the world. Her small body merely a temporary, fragile vessel for an awakening terror. And the old man was her devoted, eternal jailer, trying in vain to protect everyone, including Sarah, and the unspeakable horror that was now truly awake.